I am Rebecca, blonde in the belly of the beast, and today I have Pete Quiñones. I'm ashamed to say that I am new to your content. I just discovered you recently through your interviews with Legal Man and E. Michael Jones. You've been doing your show since 2017. Oh, hold on, I'm getting an audio issue. There we go. You've been doing your show since 2017, but I heard you say that you've been on the scene for 25 years. So I am totally late to the game. I'm glad that I found you eventually. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I haven't really been on the scene for 25 years, but about 25 years ago, I started really looking into the people that aren't allowed to be named. And
go nuts! I don't care if I get banned; it's fine.
Yeah. So I found the Institute for Historical Review in 1998, and I just started reading, and I was like, oh. Growing up in New York and seeing that thinking these people were very different from me. Then living in South Florida, which is like basically Tel Aviv, America. I was like, wow, this working for 15 years. I'm like, these people are different. Then I found the IHRA. I found the IHR, and it was like, oh, then it was over. I was like, oh, okay, now everything just got explained to me,
and things start to fall into place. I've been listening to your content for the last week, and one of the things that's interesting about your political transformation, and so many of us, I hear the story over and over again, is this penultimate stop at libertarianism. Although mine was constitutional conservatism, which is arguably much stupider. But could we start by you? Just
I was an ANCAP. That's much dumber.
I don't know. Could you discuss your political genesis a little bit and how you ended up with the level of clarity that you've achieved today?
Well, like I said, back in 98, I really started looking into them. But then 9/11 happens. Yeah. The internet wasn't what it was on 9/11. So you couldn't really do any research into Loose Change came out. I recognized that was bull from the start, that it was like a limited hangout kind of thing. So I didn't really know what was going on. Around 2007, I was watching the debates, the presidential debates. I saw Ron Paul on the stage, and he made a lot of sense. He's like, the Muslims are attacking us because we were bombing them for a decade. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I found out he called himself a libertarian. I got one of his books. It mentioned the Mises Institute. And I just went down a rabbit hole of becoming a libertarian and eventually becoming an ANCAP. And I would say right around 2017, I don't know what, I just really wanted to do something. I wanted to contribute, and I started a podcast, and people seemed to like my voice. I think that was the first thing. Everybody's like, hey, you got a really good podcast voice. I'm like, okay, so maybe I'll stick around a little bit, see what happens. And I'm 1,051 episodes later. I went through this huge transformation from like the hardcore anarcho-capitalist to whatever this thing I am now.
Yeah.
But 2020 was the breaking point. I mean, 2020.
Oh, okay, so it was a little bit later than I thought. I knew that COVID had played a part in the libertarian philosophy disbanding in your own mind. But what else contributed to kind of looking at that philosophy and being like, this is not applicable to society at large?
Well, libertarians always say that when tyranny comes, people will run to them for answers because, hey, we know why tyranny happens. No, they actually absolutely do not know why tyranny happens. So once I started studying other thinkers, found Curtis Yarvin, started reading the books that he recommended, and I found out, oh, this is just about power, and there's always going to be power. And I'm following an ideology that says that power is immoral and people who want to use it are immoral. And now, after 2020 and the summer of George, the election, January 6th, vaccines, these people sound like children.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to sound like a child anymore. So, I've basically I wrote this on my Substack this morning. People get together because they share a culture. The only purpose of politics is to make sure that culture doesn't get subverted and get harmed. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. I don't, the economics. Okay. That's way in the back. All this other stuff is way in the back. It's what are what are you willing to do? What are you prepared to do to make sure your culture doesn't get subverted to the point where you go from like a predominantly church-going culture, and then 100 years later you have kids chopping their dicks and tits off and saying, "Hey, I'm a boy or I'm a girl," when they're actually a boy or a girl. And it's,
Right.
I mean, and libertarianism did nothing. Libertarianism will say, "Oh, that's just the fault of the state." That's the fault of the state.
Exactly. Yeah.
Classical liberals will say, "Well, we just need more liberty." Well, no, it's the fault. It's the fact that we had a culture, we allowed it to be subverted. So now we're what would you even call this? I mean, like a nightmare, like borderline starting to go down Hellraiser. Let's just get the cube and start playing with it. And here comes Pinhead.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. So let's start with this concept of power. One of the things that I believe has been majorly detrimental to the advancement of right-wing ideologies is the demonization of power, or the idea that no system of government can be moral, irrespective of the philosophies of that government, if it's achieved through might. I've even heard some conservatives say that they'd rather wallow in this chaos than have a government that has ascended through means that they feel violate the Constitution or their concept of natural rights, whatever. This is obviously retarded. When devotion to principles is a hindrance to spreading those same principles, you're totally screwed. You're trapped in this circularity. Could you talk a little bit more about power? Do you think that power as a concept is morally neutral? Do you think that it's even a force for good?
I mean, I think it can be a force for good. It can be a force for bad. It's morally neutral as far as I'm concerned. The problem with ideology is basically the conservatism was sold a belief that, small government, if you grow the government, it'll only be used against you in the next election. Basically, they were sold democracy and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. Because what is it? They want to say, "Oh, republic. We're a republic, not a democracy." What are you saying to me? You think I didn't go through the same school you did?
Yeah.
I didn't go through the same curriculum you did. You think I don't know that? But that doesn't exist in reality. I mean, I want to smack them in the mouth every time they say that. I mean, it's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, sure, but it's a democracy now. I mean, it is. I mean, maybe the presidential election is not a democracy because you still have the electoral college. That's why people who want to get rid of the electoral college. But power, when you confuse morality with politics, I mean, there has to be some level of morality in your politics just because that's who, that's your culture. But if morality is not a part of your culture, you're dead.
Right.
But it's what are you willing to do to make sure that your culture, that your polity, that your people don't get destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to do anything to make sure that doesn't happen. And it's not an argument. I mean, that's the problem is everybody thinks, oh, if I just have the marketplace of ideas, the best ideas will win. The best ideas will rule the day. What are you talking about?
No, the propaganda will win.
I mean, it's just ideology is good on an individual level. If you want to have a good, an ideology for how you run your home, how you do everything, that's fine. Ideology may be good for, religion too. I mean, I think that sometimes religion just goes to the point where it's just like, well, I mean, I'm Protestant. We don't believe in the Pope. Yeah, but the Bible's your paper Pope. You act like, you act like it's, you act like that. Oh, that's the final word on everything. Really? Okay. Well, where's that gotten you? Ideology should be something very personal. Culture is the values you share, where your rights came from. I don't believe in natural rights. I don't believe in God-given rights. I don't believe in any of that. I believe that rights are defined by where your culture came from. Where does the culture come from? Then you can point to something, because if you say God-given rights, then automatically they're completely universal. They apply to all the immigrants flowing over the border. Right. They apply to the Vietnamese, so we have to go protect the Vietnamese because they have these God-given rights. No, fuck them. I don't care about I care about my people.
Right.
I care about my people. And
yeah,
that
this
is,
concept of natural rights has torn apart. Enlightenment thinking in general has torn apart the right wing. We talk about natural rights all the time on our podcast. And I did hear this discussion that you had on the concept of the Enlightenment theory that natural rights are bestowed on all individuals equally. And I've heard you say this, and I've made this exact argument before. There are entire cultures, entire nations of sub 70 IQ people in this world that, based on our legal system, are defined as functionally retarded. They would be tried in the legal system as such in America. Do you think that an individual that has no ability to conceptualize natural rights still has them if the only form of governance that arises organically from their societies is based on violence and theft and the worst kind of tribal nepotism?
I mean, freedom of association is probably the most important thing. I mean, everybody does it. Come on, let's not pretend here. There are people you don't want your kids around.
Of course.
There are people you don't want to be around. How come when it comes to like buying a home next to you, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, there are some people in the South who knew what to do about it back in the day. They could send a message. Yeah. I mean, where I live right now, that might have happened where I live right now. But the whole idea that you can invite the third world. I mean, what is it? Somalia, the average IQ is 69.
Mm-hmm.
Is that who you want living next door to you?
Yeah, it's 64 in Haiti. I think in Nepal, it's in the 50s.
Yeah, somebody asked me the other day. They're like, come on, good black people that you wouldn't mind having as a neighbor. I'm like, yeah, I know some really nice black people that I wouldn't mind having as a neighbor. The problem is their nephew Pookie comes to visit, and then everything gets fucked up. Or what happens? What happens in black families happens in white families too, but it's more prominent black families. Let's not pretend here. Something happens and someone goes to jail, and now the grandkids, the nephews, have to come live with your neighbor. Okay, what have they been learning?
Right. Exactly.
How are these people going to be able to control people who are who could possibly be criminals? Yeah, I mean, the idea that you wouldn't gatekeep your community and be like, I don't want that person in this community. Let's do everything we can to make their life miserable.
It's an insane thing. It's insane. I don't know why anybody would do that. And I think on the right, conservatives are failing miserably to counter signal these moral demands by the left. It's been really pissing me off, whether or not this whole frat boy Palestine protest was a Jewish psyop. It was. I was still infuriated by the reaction of the right, because I saw all sorts of people that I respect be like, this kid, the main focus of their argument was like, this kid isn't racist because X, Y, Z. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Are we really still in this place where we're going to be trapped in this defensive position? People needed to be openly declaring their racism like decades ago, or never stopped. This isn't a commentary on the morality of racism. It's important because it counter signals this demand from the left that no one bear any racist thought, or God forbid, demonstrates it in their actions. Discriminatory behavior is like the most ingrained human survival instinct that exists. Overriding this is such a difficult thing. It requires near constant propaganda, but it has been effective, even on the right, especially on the right. How can people most effectively counter signal the left and return this instinct that has kind of been lost, that we all have, to be discerning and to engage in discriminatory behavior?
I mean, the only way to deal with them is head on. I mean, they call you a racist and you say "end."
Yeah.
I mean, when you do that, like on social media, they don't know how to react. They lose their minds. Now, imagine if that was face to face.
Yeah.
If they don't know how to act, if they don't know how to react to you being like, you can call me a fascist. Okay, I'm a fascist. You can call me a racist. Okay, I'm a racist. Oh, you call me a Nazi. Okay, I'm a Nazi. Okay. They don't know how to, if they don't know how to do it, what are they going to do in face to face? They're going to run.
Yeah.
They don't know they don't know how to handle that. I don't care about these things. I don't care what you're calling me. Those are just political. Those are political ideologies. My ideology is to protect me and mine.
Yep.
And to do it in any way that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's so true. And the fact that people are losing this and on the right are still in this position where they're saying like, I'm not racist. It's astounding to me that people haven't figured out that it's like, well, you are racist. Who cares? It doesn't matter. This doesn't even mean anything anymore. Colloquially, racism has just turned into like, I care about my people. That's not what racism meant historically, by any means. Let's talk a little bit about culture, because you talk about that a lot on your streams, and the absence of culture being the true problem within our society. I think that this is true as we're seeing this emergence of the nuclear family being the basis for our culture, but I'm not sure it's supposed to be this way. I think the nuclear family is supposed to emerge from a functional culture, not be the functional culture. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of establishing cultural values and how historically that loss has obliterated societies?
Well, I think culture starts at home. There are very few people. I know where I live. I know some people who are very attached to their culture and know how far back their culture goes. But most people have become completely deracinated from their culture. If they grow up like where I live, so many of them are taught and it's pushed in school. You want to move to the right zip code. You want to get closer to a city. That's the only way you're going to be able to make money. Making money is what, is how you judge your self-worth. Then you can find a nice wife there, and the nice wife there is going to be somebody who's from the city or moved to the city and has the same values in moving to the city. And basically you've lost everything. I mean, when I drive by, I don't know how common this is in a lot of places, but when you drive by churches here, they usually have graveyards, grave cemeteries attached to them.
Right.
And some of those cemeteries, some of the people going to that church at that time, their great grandparents are buried there, and their great grandparents are buried there. The cemetery may be named after some of them. That's culture.
Yes.
And we've been taught and we've been brainwashed by who, that, oh, you're not allowed. That's terrible. It's so backwards. Why would you stay there? You stay there, you're not going to understand the city where we are. You have to come to the city where we are. But I literally think they're the only group that belong in cities.
Yeah.
They're the only group that are made for cities. Blacks are the worst. Country blacks are great. I mean, I meet so many of them, and I'm like, cool as hell. Yes, sir. No, same with me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, sir. No, ma'am. But once they get into the city, what the hell happens to them?
Yeah.
I mean, really, what the hell happens to them? They get into a ghetto and everything goes haywire. I actually think that most of mankind does not even belong near a city. I think that it's still in our DNA that we're to be rural, that we're supposed to be near the land. We're supposed to be of the land and near the farms. And I still have family who live out in very rural, through my mother's side, live out in very rural Pennsylvania. And I mean, they'll never leave, but I left them. I'm deracinated from them. I had to basically start over as far as culture goes, because my family never really had a culture. They didn't teach culture because they grew up in the city.
Right.
They grew up in New York City. There's a certain culture in New York City, but it's not something that is really going to be generational. How do you have generational when you're renting an apartment?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. And when your food comes from a supermarket, when all your food comes from a supermarket, that's not that. I'm sorry, but that's for a certain group who is transitory, who is cosmopolitan, let's say, rootless. You can use that term too. But most of us, I mean, our ancestors are not from that. They came from rural areas.
It dehumanizes you, especially living in a city in modern times. Like, I remember this guy passed out in the middle of the street when I was living in Seattle, and I'm pretty sure he was dead. And I was like, I don't even know if I did anything. I was like, look at that. But the thing about it was, you can't do anything because a bum will wake up and try to slit your throat. So I was like a single woman. I should not have approached him to see if he was okay. But that's the level of humanity in cities. Like, I did not care whether or not my fellow man was dead or alive because I was so in this space of protecting myself.
Smile at someone on the subway in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
I go to the grocery store here in my little town at 2500. I smile at somebody and they smile right back and they say hi, and we can get into a conversation.
And then you see their face again, and they become part of your community, and that is reassuring. That makes you feel safe. And that's what community building is all about. But so you're the first generation that's tried to reinstate this concept of culture in your family. I know you shopped around town to see the reaction of local sheriffs to COVID protocol. Do you think that if we all did this, which is what I've done, I live in North Idaho now, after living in all of America's worst cities, do you think that this will pull us out of the nosedive or just delay the collapse?
I think it'll pull some of us out of the nosedive. I think some are going to be lost. I mean, some are always lost.
Who cares, though?
Yeah. I mean, I care about my people who share my values. That's it. I mean, I can't really go beyond that. I'm not going to save the world. The people who are trying to save the world are destroying it in the process. Destroying, in trying to save the world, you end up destroying you end up destroying cultures. You end up destroying who people are, because you want them to become what you are.
Right.
You want them to be, and I'm not interested. I'm not interested in any of these protesters on college campuses, even though we may hold, if they're not paid, if they are actually real protesters, we may hold the same opinion of one group or one nation or something like that. But that's not enough that I want them to live next door to me. It's not something that I want enough that I want them to live in the same state as me. Culture goes way beyond, like a political opinion. It's remarkable when you see what people think culture is, and they think that it is like this shared belief in politics. It's just nothing to do with it. Culture is not politics. I mean, basically, what politics is to me is it's just a formalization of what your culture is. So if you have to write laws because the cities are absolute zoos, if you have to write laws to be like, well, you can't kill, you can't rape, you can't steal, you've already lost the game.
Right.
The best communities, the best cultures are ones where the rules aren't written. They're written on people's hearts. And
so is politics downstream from culture, or is culture downstream from politics? Yeah,
culture is downstream from politics.
Yeah.
I mean, culture is actually, when it comes to politics, culture is downstream from politics, but culture is actually organic. It's when politics creating culture is to subvert people's cultures, to subvert existing cultures, to turn them into what they want them to be. They want them to be like them, and that's just. I mean, what do you do? I live where I live because it's a certain culture. A friend of mine was asking me the other night. He's like, so what's the politics like around there? I'm like, it's like apolitical.
Yeah. People don't have to talk about it because they're talking about real stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're talking about, is what storm is coming? Did you get your stuff in the ground before Mother's Day?
Yeah.
Is there a storm coming? Can somebody get the fans working on that chicken house because it is starting to stank around here? Stuff like that. I mean, that's important stuff in life, not, and if the local library, which my local library, this wouldn't happen at, decided they were going to do drag queen story hour, then you would see a problem, considering the library is right next to the biggest church in town.
Yeah.
But that's not something that we have to really worry about here. If that were to happen, then I would think that mobilization would have to be made. But we really should, considering the way the world is right now, we should be planning ahead for that and have a strategy ahead of time for that. I think
that's true.
Would be a weakness.
But it is a manifestation of a functional culture to not have to. Everybody should not have to have a political opinion. Most people are of average intelligence, and they shouldn't be dabbling in these issues. People should be having kids, tending to their chickens, doing their mundane stuff. They shouldn't have an opinion on every single thing. It was never meant to be this way.
Well, I mean, when you realize that the world was a safer and less violent place when there were high illiteracy rates. I mean, people, the only reason they wanted everybody educated was to propagandize them.
Yeah.
Just get them educated enough so that they could read their propaganda and believe in it. They could control them.
You heard it here, folks. We're anti-literacy on this show.
It's amazing that people were less. And that's that whole lie about, oh, when people didn't have the Bible, when people couldn't read, they couldn't read the Bible and everything like that. All of that there has been so much revisionist history on literacy rates in from the year 500 to the year 1500 when they say, oh, no one could read, and so it's like, well, I mean, that's just not true. But they had to make sure that but not everybody could read. If you were a serf, if you were tilling the land, you didn't need to know how to read. You just needed to know how to till the land.
Right.
But mass and universal literacy, I mean, what greater way to propagate? And even Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda in the United States, said that in his article, The Engineering of Consent in 1947. He actually said the First Amendment, free speech, was the greatest tool for the propagandist, because then they were free to say whatever they wanted. And then in other essays, he talked about how mass literacy was, we just wanted them educated enough, just enough so that they could buy our advertising and believe what we wrote in the newspapers. Right.
Which leads to the question, like, what kind of government is going to be most effective for institutionalizing right-wing philosophies? So I've heard you talk a little bit about a right-wing dictator. And I was thinking, if a right-wing dictator that espoused all of our philosophies came about through absolute, complete violation of all aspects of our current governmental order, this is a bit of a rhetorical question because I know you're going to say it, but would you even care? I would not give a shit. I don't care. What do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah. There has to be authoritarianism in some way to keep order. I mean, when you look at Singapore. Singapore is a country that is multicultural. There's a lot of different Asian groups in there. If people don't know this, Asian groups are really racist against each other.
They hate each other. I was recently in Japan, and they hate the Chinese so much. I was sitting in an empty restaurant. It was just us. A group of Chinese tourists came in and went to talk to the Japanese chef. And the Japanese chef was like, "Get out. We're full." And I was just watching this like, that's so awesome that he thinks that I don't even know how he knew they were Chinese.
Yeah. But the way that they keep order there is they have authoritarian order. You spit gum on the ground, you go to jail. I mean, there's so many things that you can go to jail for. I'll even give New York City its props. In the 90s, they basically put 2 cops on every other corner. Yeah. And it stopped the crime. They went completely, it stopped the murder. They went completely. When I was growing up,
stop and frisk is so racist. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, well. When I was growing up in New York City, we were having, our murder rate was, I think it was like 2,000 a year, something like that.
Seriously?
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
That's like twice what it is in Chicago now.
Yeah. Chicago's actually come down too. But and murder rates are coming down, except in certain neighborhoods. I mean, I tell people this all the time. You want to solve crime? You want to solve quote unquote gun violence? Just get rid of the blacks.
Yeah, really.
I mean, literally, if
and Mexicans, to be
well, fair. Yeah, but no, I mean, even if you just got rid of the blacks, we'd have the gun violence of Belgium.
Yeah,
we'd have the murder rates of like Belgium. I mean, it's.
Wait, Belgium with or without Muslims, though?
Oh, I mean, I still think Belgium doesn't have a big murder. I mean, they have other problems, but I always go to murder because murder is, it's
the worst crime. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it goes back to culture. What's your culture? If your culture is theft, if your culture is you don't really care about anyone else, I mean, people, I catch a lot of shit for, what I say about the Black community. But here's the thing. If it was just them going out and like terrorizing white people or terrorizing Mexicans, that would be one thing. They terrorize each other more than they terrorize. How do you live with the people who terrorizes, they attack each other.
Yeah.
They murder each other. That they have they have no culture whatsoever.
Yeah, and in that way, I kind of feel for American Blacks, because what are they supposed to do? Like, repatriation to Africa would never work, because most of them are 20% white and have a 1 standard deviation higher IQ than almost any African nation. Like, what are they going to do? They have to be incorporated into the tapestry of America, whether or not we like it. Like, that's the only solution. So they need to be offered a solution for their shitty culture.
Well, I mean, you could solve all those problems with authoritarianism.
Yeah.
You would just have to want to. The problem is that, they are the regime in charge, whoever you might want to call the regime in charge, uses them as their foot soldiers. So they allow them to get away with doing whatever they want. And they use them. I mean, the summer of 2020.
Oh God, yeah.
Was the thing that like put me over the edge. I remember sitting with a friend of mine, and he's like, what do you think should be done with these protesters? And I'm like, machine guns. Just machine gun them. Just go out and just kill them all. I don't care if they're peaceful protesters or not. Just go out and kill them all.
Yeah.
And he's like, I didn't expect that answer from you. And I'm like, my eyes are opening really quick after COVID, because you're in the middle of COVID at this point. And then you have this kickoff, and they're like, oh, it's okay for them to be out there, but they don't want me to be in a frigging Kroger.
Oh, it was maddening. It was absolutely maddening. And I do love hearing this argument from the left. When they look at us, they're like, you're just dog whistling authoritarianism and fascism. I'm like, no, I am outright telling you.
Yeah, I'm openly calling for it.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. This whole dog whistling thing. COVID really was the turning point for so many people. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I heard your discussion on Scott Adams in his recent rant about saying every single thing that will become illegal in terms of the anti-Semitism bill. And I think we have a tendency to throw the baby out with the bathwater, since he said all this great stuff, but then he had to be like, I love Jews. I love Israeli Jews. I love American Jews, blah, 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 blah. And I heard that and I was like, you were so close, buddy. But then you said something profound in response. I think one of your listeners had made that criticism, and you said, he isn't talking to us. He's talking to people that are a little bit further back on the journey. They were normies, but they're starting to get really fed up. They're mad as hell. They're not going to take it anymore. And so I started to think, is there still utility in trying to convert the normie? Because I had thrown in the towel even before COVID, because it became so fucking frustrating to deal with these people that I was like, you are dead to me. I have no use for you. But what you said made me maybe want to reevaluate this position.
Well, I think what I added on after that was a little more important, but we're not Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
We're not here to change people's minds. If we change people's minds along the way, that's good. We're looking for people with power and money and elite status to join. We're looking for a vanguard. We're looking for people who, and that's what I said afterwards. The brilliance of him talking like that is he has people listening to his show that don't listen to mine, that don't listen to yours. He has people who have means to make change, because elites always run things. I'm a big proponent of elite theory. Whenever you go back, when you can go all the way, you can go to Rome, you can go anywhere. It's always run by a very small group. You want your own elites. You want your own elites to be in charge. And that's what I think the good thing about Scott Adams, when he did his black rant, 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and now he did this rant, is he's speaking to people that will never listen to my show, who may, it's like, hopefully it's like, okay, so they listen to Scott Adams, and maybe they go to Tucker, and then maybe they go to Daryl Cooper, Martyr Maid, and then maybe they make their way over to my show.
Totally,
so I can complete
yeah.
their radicalization. But it's a journey. It's a journey along the way. I mean, everyone takes the journey. Most people don't make the jump like right to radical politics. They're on a journey.
Yeah. Do you think that constitutional conservatism is a necessary stop? Because I feel like the trajectory most people are on is leftist, libertarian, constitutional conservative, some variation of dissident right, although I don't even know how to classify myself, so I don't really want to call myself anything. But do you think that constitutional conservatism is a necessary step on this trajectory?
I think it's hard for it not to be a given. I mean, that's what we're taught in school.
Yeah.
That's what we're taught in school. And the reason we're taught it in school is because it's feckless and pointless and powerless. And it leads to anybody who has the most power and the most willing to use the most power, and who has the most will and who has some financial backing to be able to take over power and wield power however they want. Those guys that everybody talks about being the most evil people in the world, back in the 20s and 30s and into the mid 40s, they had to really bring it was up from the streets. It was really one of the only true revolutions up from the streets, but also it didn't happen because they had a lot of numbers. I mean, eventually they were going to have to get a lot of numbers in order to have enough soldiers, but it happened because they had a tight-knit group that was willing to work together. 20 people, or I say that probably Washington D.C. is run by 2,000 people. 2,000 people can organize much easier than 350 million. 350 million people cannot organize. Then you take into consideration that 350 is splintered into all sorts of different groups. You're always going to have, that's how you have your elite. You're going to have one group who's going to be like, okay, we want power now. You have what Vilfredo Pareto called the circulation of elites. The same elites are not always in power. I mean, they cycle out. I mean, the Rothschilds have been in power now for a long, long time. But, they went after the money. They understood that if they can control the money supply, they could probably stay in power for as long as they wanted.
But the layman doesn't understand the nature of people rising to power. And I think that one of the greatest disservices that was done to me in my education was reframing historical power, especially in terms of World War II. So I was always told that Hitler himself everything that happened in World War II was the fault of Hitler specifically, that his power, his specific brand of charisma was so powerful that is how all of World War II happened, which is absolutely insane, because what happened was Weimar Germany, the culture was destroyed, and then somebody came in to fill that vacuum with the promises of reinstilling this culture that the Germans were really missing. I mean, there was hyperinflation, there was mass starvation, there was disease. He was like, I will fix all these problems by giving you the culture that was lost. I don't know really how much it had to do with Hitler himself. So I don't think that Americans as a whole, that we really have an understanding of how power must be. It's necessarily organic. Otherwise, it's not super long lasting. Like the Rothschilds and everything, I don't know that was organic, but that's why I don't think that they have the staying power.
Well, one thing I will say, we can get off of Hitler because it's so cliche to talk about him. When it came to the German people, they really didn't like the National Socialist Party, the NSDAP. They really loved Hitler. They loved him.
So you do think that it was his specific charisma?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. They loved him. They didn't really like a lot of the NSDAP at all.
What do you think that World War II would have looked like in the absence of Hitler?
Oh, I don't. Well,
speculate wildly for me.
Well, I mean, you don't have the rise of the National Socialist Party without Hitler. Yeah. I mean, something would have happened. I mean, Hindenburg would have. I don't know what Hindenburg would have done. I don't know. I don't know that you can do that, because the Treaty of Versailles, the blockade, everything from World War I demanded a Hitler. You were going to get a Hitler no matter what. Just like the Spanish, the Republicans winning the election in Spain in 1936 demanded that Franco was going to be coming back from the Canary Islands to fight. I mean, you weren't. There are certain events and certain things that are put into place that demand that a great man rises up and does something. Allende in Chile in 1973. If Pinochet doesn't come out,
Right.
I mean, basically an unknown, if he doesn't step up, then Allende, basically the Soviet Union has another satellite country in South America. So I don't know that you can. I think Hitler was almost messianic in a way, that it was going to happen no matter what.
Maybe I'm wrong about this.
I don't know if anybody could have. I don't know that. I don't think anyone else in the party had that kind of charisma. I mean, when you watch the speeches from Triumph of the Will, I mean, there are some guys. I mean, Julius Streicher, but I mean, he basically ran a newspaper. Alfred Rosenberg may have been a guy who could have been able to do it, but I don't think. I think Hitler was just. I mean, that was a given. It had to happen that way. I think we were going to get World War II no matter what.
Yeah.
Because we know that the Jews wanted to destroy Germany. I mean, after World War I, they wanted to destroy Germany. And the way we know they wanted to destroy Germany after World War I is because after World War II, I mean, they basically killed 1 million to 2 million Germans. So, civilians, citizens. I mean, they just killed them. And, I forget, Henry Morgenthau, he was the head of the Treasury of the Federal Reserve at the time. He came up with the Morgenthau Plan, and the Morgenthau Plan was to basically exterminate Germany, to make it, bomb it, to put it back to the Stone Age. There were Jewish writers. I was reading a book the other day, I can't remember his name, who had a plan to be able to sterilize the whole country in 3 months, within 3 months. They wanted to destroy Germany, so I think you would have got World War II no matter what, but I think that you would have. I think you may have gotten World War II a lot earlier. They would have sought to destroy Germany. I mean, you still may have had Weimar conditions if someone like Hitler didn't rise. Yeah. Because Weimar was. If you read Goebbels' early diaries, you get a really good idea of what Weimar was like. Emma Eisenberger, her diary Blockade does a really good job of talking about that, of what Weimar was really like. So, yeah, I mean, if Hitler doesn't come along, they may have just not even had to have a world war to destroy Germany. They would have just destroyed it. Maybe you would only have the Pacific Theater in Japan.
Do you see anyone emerging, anyone specific, or the qualities of an individual that would be necessary to be an authoritarian leader in America in the near future?
Yeah, one, but I don't know that he. I mean, he has the spirit of it. He definitely has the fuck you spirit towards the whole regime. But people don't. I don't think a lot of people see it because they see him as an insider in Silicon Valley. J.D. Vance. I think J.D. Vance has that kind of. If you read his book Hillbilly Elegy, I mean, he really hates the people who destroyed Middle America. I mean, he can't stand them. I think he's playing the game now, but I see that if someone like him, with his attitude towards the regime in charge, came into power, he may possess the kind of Machiavellian attitude to do something like that. But he's young.
What is he? I think he's under 40.
Yeah.
So there is time for you, J.D. Vance.
Yeah, I mean, he hates those people. I mean, he really, really hates those people. I mean, that book tells you everything. It tells you everything you need to know. You just need to read subtext, because people like him are smart enough to not put all of their beliefs out there.
Right. Well, he can't. I mean, it would be absolutely destructive. to his reputation at this point,
Right.
and it would be a hindrance to any
Blake,
kind of future political position.
I mean, I would love Blake Masters because I think he's probably the smartest of all of them, and he also looks the part that I would want. But you know, it's I think they've clocked Blake.
Yeah.
Blake is definitely on their radar. You know?
Yeah, totally. In that same stream that you were discussing all the Scott Adams, what he had to say, you said something also that I found very reassuring. You said that based on the discussions that are being had on Twitter right now and what we're allowed to say, you don't understand how anyone cannot be at least a little bit white-pilled. Could you elaborate on this a little bit?
Well, I mean, Twitter is where narratives go to be born. You know, that's what Twitter has been used for, at least since, like, I would say 2014, 2015, especially with the rise of Donald Trump. The left went there to create their narratives and to spread it because that's where all the journalists were. You know, the short character count was perfect for journalists because they have to, you know, write in sound bites and things like that. But now when you go on Twitter, I mean, it is, depending on what section you're in, it's just dominated by people like us.
I know.
It's people like us having conversations out in the open about, you know, I mean, there has to be at least 5 or 6 polls I see a day, you know, asking about, you know, did the Halabunga really happen? Things like that. And it's, and just the open conversations. I mean, like, you know, after October 7th, there were so many people of Jewish ancestry who, like, absolutely lost their minds and showed their ass. And the fact that people, like 75 to 80% of the responses was like, you get what you fucking deserve.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that not a white pill when you see that? Now, there are a bunch of people who are going to be like, well, all they're doing is collecting IP addresses so they can round you up and take you to camps later, and you're going to go to a gulag and everything like that, not realizing the government doesn't even, like, what agency would do that? What agency would have the budget to do that? They might make an example out of one person.
They couldn't even figure out who's been vaccinated and not. Like, they're not as organized as everybody thinks.
Yeah. So
I will say, though, my reaction to that, like Candace Owens talking about everything, I'm like, why are we being allowed to discuss these things? And it made me, I sound conspiratorial, but it made me feel like it's so that more legitimate accusations of anti-Semitism can arise and then be weaponized all over again, because they've really lost the Holocaust goodwill. Like, that's tapped out. I don't think that they can even use that anymore. And so I'm like, they need a new round here.
Saying that. Even Scott Adams is saying that they're losing their Holocaust, that the Holocaust card has basically been punched to the point where there's no more room to punch it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just completely white-pilled because I'm looking and I'm like, okay, so, like, pretty much every country in the world, with the exception of about 4, is like, we hope Israel dies. And, you have all of these countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all these countries surrounding joining BRICS.
Mm-hmm.
And, joining BRICS is just really the ultimate FU to Jewish power, because it's basically saying the dollar, we don't care about the dollar, and we know who controls the dollar.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm completely white-pilled. I mean, I don't know. In my lifetime, are we going to see great change? I don't know. But then again, I didn't think in my lifetime, when I started reading, Mark Weber in 1998 talking about World War II, that I'd openly see people in public talking about Jews. I have people who contact me every day who are like, yeah, my parents used to be like the Jews are the chosen people. Now they're like, fuck them. Fuck. I mean, I had people contacting me who were like, you before October 7th, for a year and a half before October 7th, you talked about them so much, because I really started talking about them after Ukraine, because I knew that they were responsible for Ukraine. And I really, and I was like, I'm not saying Zionist anymore. I'm going to say Jew. I don't care. And I had people contact me October 7th who were like, man, I stopped listening to you because, you were talking about it too much. And then October 7th, I saw the way they acted. I was like, oh, I have to start listening again.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the fact that it is being openly discussed, the fact that the American government is passing laws to protect like another country.
Yeah.
Like openly. I mean, this isn't like, oh, we need to send 70. I mean, they didn't pass laws to say you couldn't say the Ukraine war was unwinnable. They're like, we're passing laws to say you can't say anything about Jews.
Yeah, but that's an admission that they're so detestable to the general public that they have to be legally protected. It's like the most uncool thing that they could possibly do, and it just means that they've lost. I was actually kind of happy. Everybody's freaking out about this bill, but I was like, isn't this validating for anybody else?
Oh yeah. What are you worried about? I mean, first of all, if you understand the bill, it's under Title VI, so it really only applies to colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we know that can be drawn out and it could be spread into the public. We know that, but Scott Adams didn't figure that out when he went on his rant. He didn't talk about it being only Title VI. He's like, no, I'm going to say whatever the hell I want, and just going off and everything like that. And when you have normies talking like that, when you have, like, I mean, I don't know how much Candace Owens was making from Daily Wire, but I've seen other Daily Wire contracts, and it had to be substantial. I know she's married to some like royalty duke something from England or something, whatever.
It's not just that. He's worth just him $100 million.
Okay, well,
so she had some walking around money.
Yeah, but the fact that you're even willing to trash your reputation. Now, I mean, to me, a lot of people will say, well, she trashed her reputation with...
Who cares, though?
With her old doxing website and everything like that.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But, I just... and let's not forget who started this. It was Kanye. Even if Kanye has gone back on it, he started something that can't be stopped. It's after October 7th. What I said was when I saw the response and when I saw the way people were reacting on Twitter, I was like, that's it. This is the conversation from now on. They can't go back. This is the conversation from now on. We are going to be talking about the Jews from now on and what happens to countries when they start talking about them. Immediately people are like, why are there so many people on the board? Why are there so many people working for the NIH who are Jewish and you can prove have dual citizenship?
Yeah. Why
are there so many on top of it? Oh, because they have these high IQs. Okay, but they're 2% of the population. So let's say a good part of them, a good part of 2% of the population has high IQs. Okay, the white population in this country is what, 60%?
Mm-hmm.
Just in sheer numbers, not per capita, white people, we'd have more whites with high IQs than Jews. Okay,
right.
So why do Jews dominate all these? Because of nepotism and because the system has been built for them to be able to be slotted in anywhere. When they had that picture of 457 Jews working in Biden's cabinet, in Biden's White House, I mean, okay, I mean, sure, they flock to cities, they love power. 457. Then you look at his cabinet, it's like 70 to 80%. Then you look at what the Treasury Secretary, Secretary of State, everyone. Okay, there are no Protestants. There are no white people that can do these jobs. These are the only people who are. I mean, I know that white people are graduating from Ivy Leagues. These are the only people who can do these jobs. Stop with the high IQ bullshit.
Yeah.
There's not. When you start digging into that, the evidence for that is like 2 surveys. There's like 2 studies that were done in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. People want to go, oh, Jews, the Nobel Prize, and that's another thing that has been shown in this whole thing. When a Jew does something good, he's a credit to the whole Jewish race.
Oh, a white person.
Yeah. Oh, no. When a Jew does something good, oh, look at how many Nobel Prize winners we have. That's just a credit to the Jewish race. Okay, let's talk about Garrick Yagoda. He was in Soviet Union. He was head of the Cheka, and he's responsible for the death of about 20 million people. And he's Jewish.
Is that applicable? Yeah.
Is that applicable to the Jewish? The Bolsheviks after the revolution, getting into about the 1930s, half of the executioners in the Soviet Party were Jewish.
Yeah.
Is that something we should be celebrating? Oh no, they have to be. Their Judaism has to be ignored. Mm-hmm. We can't look at their Judaism. We have to judge them as individuals. That's
whereas I'm morally culpable for like the blood memory of my ancestors that were slave owners or whatever the fuck. It's like people are going to look at this. Average Americans are looking at this going, yeah, I don't think so. There's just no way. Like nobody's going to accept that kind of responsibility for their ancestors, good or bad. So why should we attribute the positives to the entire Jewish nation?
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, as their own philosophers have written, the Jews are never guilty of anything. And they're not allowed to say they are. They're not allowed to say they're only innocent of everything. They've never done anything wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. No one ever asked. When I study something, I want to know who. I want to know when. I want to know where. I want to know how. But you know what the most important thing to me is? Why? Mm-hmm. When you tell me, well, you know, there were pogroms in Russia against Jews. Okay, why? Why that happened? Well, we're just everywhere we go. We're everybody hates us and they want to kill us. Okay, why? Why?
Yeah.
Just tell me why.
Because they're jealous of their superior intellect and their high verbal IQ. It's jealousy.
See, no one would give them jobs, so they allowed them to be in charge of banking. I don't want you working in my grocery store. I don't want you working in my field, but please take care of our money.
And then the infrastructure, the economic infrastructure of this entire nation. Yeah.
I mean, come on. Come on. And what's hilarious is to think that they're not they don't operate as a group. It's been proven. Thaddeus Russell wrote his book, Renegade History of the United States, that remember, there was a time when Jews were the best jazz musicians. There was a time when Jews were the best basketball players.
I don't believe that.
They were. There was a time when the Jews were the best boxers. And then their newspapers, the Jewish newspapers, started saying, we need to stop this. Boxers become promoters. Basketball players buy the teams. Jazz musicians buy the jazz clubs. There's literally, you can actually prove this. You can actually go into their old newspapers and their old neighborhood weeklies where they're like, we have to become people of the mind. Right now, we're people of the body. We're playing music. We're doing sports. All of this stuff that's like, it's gross. You know, it's what Black people do. We need to become more the people of the mind. And they did. And they acted as a monolith in doing it. So to say, oh, I have to judge them as individuals. Nope. Sorry. It's not going to happen.
I'm not being judged as an individual. Why would I extend that courtey to any other group? I'm not doing that. Yeah.
No, I mean, they don't want to judge us as individuals. I mean, they look down, they call, I mean, I know Goyim literally means nations. Okay. I know it means nations, but I also know what another term for it means, you know? Okay. You know, it's like, I know what faggot means in Britain. It could be a cigarette. It could be a meatball, but it's something different here. It could be a bundle of sticks,
is.
But it's something different here. All right. So don't play word games with me. I'm sorry. I'm one of those ones that managed to, I don't know how it happened, but I managed to get the high IQ. Okay. So you're not gonna put one past me. All right. Every once in a while you'll get one past me, but you know, I'm a pretty good goalie. The puck doesn't really get past me often.
I don't know. I think that one of the things that appeals to the general public about you and why you've become so popular is that you really embody this racial fatigue. Like, you've got a real attitude, like you don't give a fuck. And I think that that is incredibly appealing to the average American that is looking at this and is like, my ancestors helped build this country, and I'm just told on a daily basis that I'm shit and that those people are shit, and I have to kiss all these minorities' asses. And I don't care if you destroy my reputation because I'm poor anyway. So go nuts. It doesn't matter if I'm unhireable. And they've made a grave mistake by creating so many of us, because now we basically just have our own infrastructure in North Idaho. I had somebody retweet me the other day. They were like, you can never get a real job ever again. And I was like, I've never cared about anything less in my entire life, because I set my life up so that I don't have to work for any of you people ever again. And how many people like me are there out there? Thousands, millions of people that are like, I'm not doing this anymore. Let's do our own thing. And they're making it work. And that's why people love you.
Oh, thank you. But, my mother's family's been here since the early 1800s, so they weren't founding stock, but they got here soon after. My dad's family was from a territory that was conquered by the United States. And, my dad and my grandparents are all born American citizens. My dad came here on a plane, so it's, I'm as American. I consider myself to be as American as everyone else. I mean, you can go and find. I heard Ann Coulter talking about this the other day. You can go find daughters of the American Revolution who are like complete progressives, and
oh yeah,
it's like, what am I? They're more American than me because their family was here. Family fought in the Revolution. No, fuck that. It's like, no, I'm sorry,
yeah.
but the whole idea that we're going to back down to these people because we fear loss. I understand the Anons on Twitter. I understand. I love my Anons. I've come to know a lot of them personally, met a lot of them and everything. And I have friends who I've met 3 and 4 times who I don't know their real names. I've met in person in real life. I don't know their real names. I don't care. I trust them more than I do people that I grew up with.
Yeah.
But there is going to have to come a day when we're all going to have to just step out from behind the mask and just be like, screw you. We're not taking it anymore. This is who I am. My family's been here this long. I'm going to fight for it. Fuck you. And that's what these people, fuck you. I do not call me an anti-Semite all you want. I don't give a fuck. Call me a race. I don't care. Call me a bigot. I just don't care. You call me whatever you want. I'm going to be dead in a couple decades. Who cares? It's like, if I live a long life, maybe I could stay around another 30 or so, but who knows? My health your health can go bad overnight. What am I going to do? I'm going to sit here and I'm going to walk on eggshells because some fucking guy or girl who thinks that like men can get pregnant, or I'm going to be scared of what they can call somebody. Everything. Yeah. It's like, come on, whatever.
Yeah. And that's why Scott Adams got so much traction, because he really embodies the spirit. Like, I'm fucking tired. I'm not doing this anymore. Man. And I think that is a really powerful thing. I really do. So maybe this fatigue can catch on to the general public in a more meaningful way. But I would disagree with you. I think that this time for being anonymous is over. Like, I get messages from people all the time like, I can't do it because of my job. I'm like, well, then change your life. Like, I can't because my wife is a stay-at-home mom and we live in this area. I'm like, then move. Like, I don't understand. I feel like everybody's such a pussy. Like people are acting like there's no way they can change their lives so that they can say what they want. Why? I did. Like, well, you were privileged. I'm like, you sound like a leftist now. So,
well, even people who were, people who founded this country understood that they had to stay anonymous in a lot of their writings and stuff like that, or else they would, they couldn't continue the work.
Yeah.
I really understand. I really understand that, especially a lot of the content creators who are still anonymous. I understand it because they can make your life a living hell. I just think that it's getting to the point where no one cares. It's like, I've had people say, I know your address.
Cool.
And I'm like, okay.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah. I could see you coming from a mile away. I don't have neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay? It's like I don't have my neighbors are a long way away.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about using using chicken litter to do the lawn and everything like that.
Mhm.
It's like, oh man, your neighbor's gonna hate you. I'm like, what neighbors? What
Yeah.
are you talking about?
Who?
I can see it coming from a mile away.
That's true.
But,
And it's a dangerous proposition. Like, I live in North Idaho, and I had some problems at my old house, and so I called the police, and they were familiar with swatting because there's some other YouTubers that live up here, and they knew all about it, and they were like, just go talk to your neighbors. And so I went to talk to my neighbors. I'd never met them before, and they all were like, we're locked and loaded over here, so we'll be keeping an eye on your house. Like, anybody that comes to one of our houses is they're going to get shot. Like, what is the plan here? Like, you're going to come harass me at my house? Like, that's dangerous for you.
we went on vacation for 7 days. We were gone for 7 days. I left the porch light on, and we got deliveries, and they left them on the porch. So even at night, the porch light is on for someone driving by. I can see the packages there. They were there for 5 days. Got back, they were still there.
Yeah,
they're still there. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. I'm not going to live near a city. I know people are like, well, that's where all the political power is. I'm like,
so what?
How do you plan on getting it? If you're a right winger, how do you plan on going into a city and getting political power?
Yeah.
What kind of coalition are you building?
Oh yeah, the
Well,
FBI will be all over that. Yeah.
Oh, and even if you hide who you are and you're able to, get power, and then you change your, they'll get you out of there. It's like, what do you think you're doing? Go find. I'm somebody who always says culture is the most important thing. Telling people to get out of cities. People have told me in the past, you say culture is the most important thing, but you're telling me to go away from my family. I'm like, well, take your family with you.
Yeah.
Go
of course.
build somewhere else. You cannot build a legacy in a city. Unless you're unless you're like a Trump or something like that. I don't think most people have the ability to do that. I mean, Trump's uncle was such an insider with the government that when Tesla died, everything that Tesla had was given to John Trump. Okay, so Trump doesn't come from this family of like, they just build buildings and stuff like that. No, he was an insider in the government. Let's stop right now
and call it what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to go find your own people. You have to go. I wrote this Substack a while back, and I talked about how we've been so conditioned that money is the most important thing. Like going up a comma in your bank account is more important than your family. That I know people who have acres and acres of land, and they may have a family cemetery there, and they'll, when whoever is on that dies, because they may be able to make some money, they'll sell that. They'll get rid of this family legacy that may have been there for 200-300 years that they may have settled themselves. Maybe even if they care about their ancestors a little bit, they'll make a deal that the cemetery stays there. But if they get offered another $50,000, they'll remove those tombstones. They'll destroy their whole legacy for money. And that's what we've been trained to do.
I think it's the majority of people would do
legacy.
this. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's definitely true. Wow, what a depressing note to end on.
Well, I mean, I can do that too. I can do that too. But I'm trying to get people to be like, look,
there's
stay
more.
Where you are. If your family's been somewhere forever, stay there. Just build. That's your legacy. That's who you are. You're not your bank account. Yep. You're where you came from and the sum of the experiences of your ancestors.
That's true. And I think that people, they don't think that they can live without. And I always hear this argument, like, people aren't having kids because kids are so expensive. I'm like, I have kids and they're super cheap. Like my daughter that is 3 months old has literally cost me nothing because I breastfeed her. Like, where's this idea coming from that kids are so expensive? Like, they don't have to go to the best schools. They don't have to wear the best clothes. Like, they're not expensive. They aren't. And I think that people are like that with all things in life. I'm finding that things are less expensive than I had anticipated now that I'm in my adulthood. And it's been kind of a blessed surprise. So I encourage people to really think about what you can live without.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of sacrifices you can make. And a lot of them don't even have to be sacrifices. I know the things are really bad because people used to be able to just 50 years ago have one one person working, and the wife could stay home and take care of the kids. You can have multiple kids. You could buy a house, you could have a car, and things they've engineered it in a way to make people more dependent upon them, and more move closer to the cities and things like that. And but I mean, you just have to figure out a way to beat them. You have to do everything you possibly can. When I started my podcast, and my podcast started getting a little bit of little traction, I was working a full-time job of 52 hours a week, sometimes 60 hours a week. And then I just decided, I was like, after a while, I want this podcasting thing to be what I want to do. And I said, in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to put out more material. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put out an episode Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I'm just going to put out 3 episodes a week. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it.
You figure it out, though. Yeah.
I figured it out while I was working. And while I was working, the first year, I made a little bit of money. The second year, I made a little more money. I got to the point where I was able to replace my income. And then it's really hard, because it's like you got 2 incomes coming in.
Yeah.
The same thing. And it's like, do I quit my job? I am like, doing really well here. I didn't raise my living standard at all. I still drove a car that I bought for $500 and still lived in the same exact place and everything. But maybe I went out to eat one more day a week. And I was just like, I can't do this job anymore. It's just, this is what I was meant to do, to podcast, write, and do all these things. So I quit. And by the graciousness of the people who listen and who read and everything, I'm able to do this job and be able to wake up. And first thing I do when I wake up after I meditate and pray, I try to start writing, or I start reading. I'm constantly working on the show, even if I'm on the road. If we're driving somewhere, if we go on vacation and we drive, I try not to fly anymore. In 2022, I flew 8 or 9 times. I was in and out of airports like 8 or 9 times. Last year it was like once. This year it's going to be 0. And I'm just staying away. So we're doing a lot of driving. We drove to Texas from Alabama. We went down to Florida for a week this year and everything. While I'm on the road, I am listening to books on tape. I'm still working, because this is what I want people to know, what I know. I want people to try to understand what I'm seeing in the world. Even if you disagree, at least understand where I'm coming from. Maybe you'll get something out of it. Maybe it'll plant something for the future.
Plant the seed, yeah. And I think that's really important. So on that note, that was my guest, Pete Quiñones. You can check out his content in the links below. Please listen or watch his podcast. It is fantastic. I'm so glad that I've discovered you. And thank you so much for joining me today. I do have a few interviews coming up in the coming weeks. I think I'm going to have Devin Stack back on. Emily Yukis is going to come on. So I'm definitely going to get banned. It's not going to be this stream where we said Jew 7,000 times. It's going to be the next stream. Although you might be the one. This might be the Showa episode. I'd be proud.
Well, they haven't kicked me off of YouTube yet. They've demonetized me. But I've
been demonetized for like years and years. Yeah.
But there's also episodes I just don't put on YouTube. So
smart. Smart. Anyway, so check me out on Rumble. This will be posted on Rumble, on BitChute, on YouTube. Check out my Twitter, blondes_tweets. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon. Bye, guys.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.